Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 2, Episode 5, She's a Man, Baby, a Man. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of exactly what happens within this episode. In this episode, it opens on Phoebe being really warm and entering Piper's club and rubbing ice all over herself while she talks about how she's been really warm lately and been dreaming about sleeping with men before ultimately killing them at the end of the dream. Meanwhile, then Prue joins the conversation and talks about how frustrated she is with a man named Alan, who she's had 3 dates with and has been, at least to her mind, giving him all of the signals, but he's been ignoring those signals. We then move on to seeing Phoebe dreaming about killing yet another man in her dreams. While at work the next day, Prue confronts Alan, who says he'll call her and again misses the signal that she's kind of upset with him before Daryl arrives to basically distract Prue, and he wants to discuss a case of several men dying over the last 4 nights of of he calls it intense cerebral trauma while also being drained of testosterone. And the only link between all of these men is a dating service called Fine Romance. And he tells Prue that if she and her sisters look into it, to slip him the answer because the brass or his superiors are watching him on this case. We then have Prue taking the file to Piper and Phoebe, who are at home, and Phoebe immediately recognizes all of the victims from the dreams she's been having over the previous nights. So they go to the dating service and signing up Prue in order to kind of get a lay of the land. And this is when Phoebe bumps into Owen, who is a potential victim. They then get home and find that Piper has been watching Dan through the window. But before she started watching Dan, she was able to find the Book of Shadow entry that identified the culprit of these murders as a succubus, which is essentially a witch who has made a pact with darkness in order to prevent herself from becoming heartbroken, that basically lures in men and then sucks out their testosterone with her razor-sharp tongue. And then on the next page, we have a spell that will defeat the succubus, which Prue casts. However, contrary to their expectations of giving them a way to destroy the succubus, it does do so, but in an unconventional way by turning Prue into a man. And basically, this is to attract the succubus to him, but because it's still a woman inside, they should be able to resist the succubus, hence being able to destroy them, is the theory behind the spell. Of course, Prue is very embarrassed about this and decides to hide away from the sisters. Eventually, Piper and Phoebe convince Prue to leave her bathroom where she has been hiding out. And then, of course, this is when Dan arrives at the door and Prue kind of starts to mimic Dan's motions, using him for reference on how to be a man. Phoebe then gets a flash of egg sacs, showing that the succubus is not only in heat killing men, but also in the process of reproducing. And so they decide that it's now more urgent, so they take Manny, which is what they've decided to call Prue while she is in her male form, and Manny joins the Fine Romance dating service, and it happens to be during a mixer. While at the mixer, Phoebe talks to Dr. Owen Grant, who is, according to her premonition, the next victim of the succubus that she has lined up. So she's trying to distract him, keep him occupied with her, so he can't meet the succubus and end up becoming a victim. Meanwhile, Piper looks at they find out that Dan, the neighbor Dan, is part of the dating service, and she watches his video kind of um, after freezing Darla, the receptionist, to steal the tape. She goes and watches it and finds out that Dan's ideal that he's describing pretty much describes her. We then, of course, have things coming to a head with Phoebe flashing that the succubus is in the room and has her sights on Owen. So she kind of yells at Prue to take him out. I believe she meant take him outside, but Prue, being now masculine, decides to punch Owen in the face. And then as Phoebe tries to make her way over to where Prue and Owen are, the person who is Daryl's temporary new partner for the episode, Inspector Smith, decides to grab Phoebe and prevent her from moving, asking to speak to her in private. And she, of course, is resisting. Daryl comes over, tells him to let her go. But then Prue, having seen Phoebe get grabbed, goes ahead and punches the inspector as well. And at this point, Daryl doesn't know that that's Prue, so he arrests him while telling the inspector to basically arrest Owen as well. Then Piper and Phoebe basically go to Daryl and bail Prue out, saying that the reason that there hasn't been a murder yet tonight is because of Manny, so you gotta let him out, but keep Owen in jail because he's still a potential victim, so it's better that he's safe there. And then, they take Prue home. Prue's kind of getting in touch with the masculinity. She's fixing an air conditioner. She's admiring Dan's truck. Things of that nature. And has also been called by Fine Romance that her dating tape, because she was more in touch with her femininity at that point, as she stays a man longer, she loses touch with that more and more. But at the time she made the video, she was very in touch with her femininity, therefore it was very sensitive, broke a record. She got 20 dates. She lined them all up at P3. And then they basically all go to P3. And at the club, Phoebe starts getting more flashes while Prue as Manny talks to Alan, kind of gets his perspective on their relationship. And then gets the signal, goes out to the alley, and they thought it was Jan who did the filming of the video, but it turns out it's actually Darla, who is the succubus, and they basically arrive in the alley just in time for Piper to freeze her as she is sticking her razor tongue that sucks out testosterone at Prue. And then basically once she unfreezes, she realizes that her plan's been interfered with, and so she goes to escape and runs towards Daryl with her tongue out, and Daryl shoots her, and they believe her to be dead, except Prue doesn't revert, which is of course suspicious. We then see in the morgue that Darla was not in fact killed, and she wakes up and kills Inspector Smith. Then goes to the house where she kidnaps Manny and takes him back to her loft or her apartment, and then Phoebe purposefully connects psychically to the succubus and then basically reverses the connection so that she's in control of the succubus's body and reminds Prue that she is a woman and that she's meant to reject the succubus because Prue's kind of in it deep at that point. Luckily, Prue does come out of it, remember she is a woman, and does in fact resist and eventually reject Darla and uses her power to throw Darla into the closet armoire that has all of the egg sacs in it. And then falling candles kind of light whatever substance is coating the egg sacs on fire, and Darla and the eggs all burn. And then once they have burned, Prue reverts to being a woman again, and at the end of the episode, they go to P3 where the Cranberries are playing, and basically Prue meets Alan, And Piper has invited Dan, and Phoebe is dancing with Owen. And we basically end on the live music while everybody's dancing and having a good time at the club. So now that we've rewatched the episode, I will be ranking this episode on our two lists, our mostly objective ranking list, and then our personal ranking list, which is purely my opinion. So the mostly objective rank values for today, there are quite a few. And some of them, I will call them out when I get to them, I was hesitant to put on, but I also felt like they applied, and that is why they are there. So first off, we obviously have our single episode supporting character introductions. And in this case, we of course have the evil for the episode, the succubus Darla, who is worth 1 point. Then we of course have Dr. Owen Grant, who is the potential victim that Phoebe distracts, which is also worth 1 point. We then have Alan, who Prue has been apparently dating off screen and who is kind of her love interest for the episode. And then we also have Inspector Smith, who is Daryl's partner in this episode. However, as the summary indicated, he does not last past this episode. And he's also worth 1 point, so that's 4 points already. We next get into the supporting relationship development, which is worth 2 points. And this, of course, has to do with Prue and Alan. So, as mentioned off screen, Prue has gone on 3 dates with Alan. At the start of the episode, she's frustrated because she thinks she's putting out all the signals, and yet he hasn't taken the next step to essentially sleep with her. And she doesn't understand why he's being so polite and upstanding when she's signaling that he doesn't need to be. And then, you know, Piper and Phoebe, they reassure her and they're like, unless he says he'll call you, which is the kiss of death, you're still fine. And then the next day at work, Prue kind of goes in early in a rush, checks herself out in the compact mirror, runs over to where Alan is and is all, did I do something to upset you? And he says, of course she hasn't, and he'll call her. So she thinks now she's been rejected. However, once she's become a man, Piper comes in and says, oh, by the way, Alan actually did call and had wanted to go out with her, but obviously that can't happen now because she is a man. So then when they go to P3 and Manny is waiting for his dates to start, he happens to sit down next to Alan, and Alan and him have a conversation about how confusing dating is in the modern age, how Alan tells him there's 2 types of girls. There's, the ones that want to be the man of the relationship, and then there are the ones that are classically feminine and, want the chivalry, want the chairs pulled out for them, want the doors opened for them. I fell into this camp. And then how he thinks Prue's the later like the later type. However, he does know that she is on the rebound, obviously. I would imagine he's talking about Andy here, because Andy passed on and she was in love with him, so that's who she's rebounding from. So he was trying to be careful and take things slow, but now he's afraid that he did take things too slow and that she's angry at him. And Prue, as Manny, kind of gives the advice to, not lose hope because now she kind of understands his perspective. And then, of course, we have at the end of the episode when Prue becomes a woman again, she asks him to P3. They meet up again and they of course have a great night dancing. Now that they have a similar understanding, and she basically warns that healthy communication is important because once you try to read between the lines, then both of you read a different script and misunderstandings occur, and it's easier just to talk, which very reasonable advice. The next the next value that applies is +3. And this is our multi-season supporting character development, and this of course has to do with Daryl. So at the end of the episode, or near the end of the episode, Daryl shoots Darla, who is running at him, with her tongue out, and the succubus's tongue is not a normal tongue. It is a very obviously not human. And so this is basically Daryl, he's been walking around the secret. He's like, I know you guys have a secret. I don't want to know what it is. And then here he comes to an alley where the sisters are confronting this woman who then runs at him with her tongue out. And clearly, though it isn't really confirmed because we don't really see his reaction to it past shooting her, now he is in the know that there are some things that are not human running around, and that is development. Next one is a +4, and this is our multi-season main character development, and this of course has to do with Phoebe's psychic link to the succubus. Obviously, Phoebe has premonitions, and we have seen with the Deja Vu episode, the finale of season 1, that sometimes her premonitions, because it can see through times, also can cause other effects, such as her being able to remember when they were in the time loop. And now in this episode, it is letting us know that she somehow became psychically linked to the succubus while she was in heat, which is the foundation for this episode. And then we also get the fact that Prue turned into a man in this episode, which is a pretty big development for her. And then she turned back before the end of the episode. And then our final development is our main relationship development. Now, as I had mentioned in previous episodes, I was debating with myself on whether Dan would be considered a supporting relationship or a main relationship. But the fact of the matter is, he lasts several episodes throughout the season in a relationship with her, and because of the standards which I've held a main relationship to with Prue and Andy, who only lasted like under 8 episodes, Dan lasts more than that, so I have decided he is a main relationship qualified character. And so we, of course, get the main relationship development, which starts with Piper watching Dan wash his car through the window. We then have Dan asking Manny about whether or not Piper is seeing anyone. We then have Piper watching Dan's tape at the dating service, which happens to describe her. He even mentions the fact that they are neighbors, that he might wait before going to work just so that he can see her leave to work and they can share a smile. Talks about her long dark hair. He's describing her. And then, once they're back home, she watches Dan even more through the window while he works on his vehicle. And then, when Prue is kind of starting to become the toxic type of man, she kind of goes over and waxes poetic about the type of things Dan said in his tape and how that's the type of man Manny wants to be or should want to be, which of course expresses interest. And then, of course, we have Manny basically telling her that, because Dan's such a great guy and men are also afraid of rejection, that's probably why he hasn't asked her out yet, so she should be the one to take that first step. And Piper then ends up taking that advice and asking Dan to go to P3 with the Cranberries benefit with her, and then they end up dancing the night away and having a great time together. So these are all of our positives, which have brought us all the way up to 17. But there are also a couple of negatives in this episode. The first episode is a main relationship regression or breakup. Now, this has to do with, again, the Piper and Dan relationship. At this point, we have not gotten an official "we are done" from Piper and Leo. We have had discussions that they may not be satisfied in the relationship that they're in right now, especially on Piper's end. How, she is in love with him, but it hasn't felt right. He's only been coming around for business. They aren't seeing each other enough. She's dissatisfied with that. We got that in the last episode. However, they did not officially break up. She did not say she was no longer seeing Leo, and yet now she has asked Dan out, and that in my mind then is cheating. And some people may disagree. This is one of the ones I was hesitant on because I'm like, there's some people who are like, if you haven't had the exclusive conversation, are you allowed to see other people? Are you allowed to flirt around with other people? Some people might think that that's okay. However, nothing in the conversations we've seen between Piper and Leo have indicated that he would be fine with her seeing other people or her seeing other people while they are still technically together, as they have not officially broken up yet. And now she's moving forward with Dan, asking him out. And I feel like I said, to me, that is a form of cheating. And she should have had the courtesy to officially break up with Leo before pursuing her feelings for Dan if she felt that she had feelings now for Dan. In my opinion, that's a base level of respect to your partner. And even if you're ending it with your partner, you should still have that base level of respect. And so for me, it is a regression, and that is a -3 points. We then also have weak or dislikable supporting character, and in this episode, that is also -4 points. And this is Inspector Smith. Now, when we first meet him, he is in the car with Daryl, and he is taking pictures of the women going in and out of Fine Romance while making comments on their appearances. We then have him continuing to make snide comments pretty much every time we see him, being a pervert, essentially. And then we have him going into the mixer and forcibly grabbing Phoebe, showing his badge, and telling her that he wants to speak with her privately. And it's thank goodness that Daryl came in and was like, "What are you doing? You can't do that. Let her go." Obviously, absolutely despicable. Manny, so Prue as a man, punches him out, and frankly, he deserved it. And then, of course, there's the fact that after Daryl lets out Manny who punched him, he's then like, "That guy punched me. I can't believe you let him go." And Daryl's like, "Done with him. We're all done with him. He is disgusting." And then he gets his just desserts when he goes into the morgue where Darla is and gets a little too close to the corpse and close enough for her tongue to just kind of latch into his mouth and suck out all his testosterone, killing him like the other victims, allowing her to then go after Prue. But that brings us to a 10 out of 10 episode, even with the negatives. So out of the most recent episodes, we've got 5 episodes in the season, and already 3 of them are 10 out of 10, which is a very strong start to the season. And with our mostly objective list, whenever more than one episode has the same score, we just rank it within episode order, which then brings our mostly objective ranking list so far to, in first place, Witch Trial, second, The Painted World, third, She's a Man Baby, a Man, fourth, Morality Bites, and in fifth place, The Devil's Music. Which brings us to my personal ranking. Now, my personal ranking, it's not as high as the objective one. As I mentioned, for me personally, because we are still ambiguous with Leo, whom she was dating, and she has not broken up with him but is already starting a relationship with Dan, in my mind that is cheating, or at least cheating adjacent. I feel icky about it. It makes me not want to root for Dan and Piper because it's essentially, at least on her part, kind of shady behavior going on. And I know not everybody will consider it cheating. There are a lot of people who believe you can talk around with multiple people, and as long as you haven't had that exclusive conversation, you're free to do whatever you want with whoever you want. And that's fair. I accept that there are people like that, and that is how some people operate. It is just not how I operate. For me, this is icky. I don't like it. It bothers me. There was also the fact that in this episode, Phoebe was oiled to hell and back. She looked wet the entire episode and shiny, and it also was kind of disturbing and icky to me. I was like, this is not, this is gross. She is literally like, it looks like she swam through olive oil. It's not cool. And I did not enjoy that at all. We also have the fact that Prue became a man in this episode. And it looks like they did do some prosthetics on the nose to make it bigger, but I'm like, why did you not put prosthetics on the jawline? Maybe a little bit more of a full beard, like something that would show masculinity. She literally looks like a woman wearing a bad application of a fake beard and mustache. Like, she doesn't look like a guy at all. At all. and she's supposed to become a man. And you know that they had prosthetics available because they used it on her nose. So why didn't they, like thicken out her jawline? Why didn't they give a little bit more of the facial hair? They put on like the little goatee and mustache. They could have filled it out, given, more of a chiseled effect. They could have, because they had her wearing very covering clothes, they could have put on like some sort of muscle suit or something to make her appear broader, maybe more muscular. Like there were a lot of things that they could have done with prosthetics that weren't, major effects, similar to what they have done with her nose in the episode to make her look more masculine and like a man, and they didn't do that. So it literally just looks like a woman with bad facial hair, like a bad application of fake facial hair. That is what it looks like. It's not believable in any way, shape, or form that anyone would think that she is man. They did use like a voice changer to change her voice, probably post like in the editing, but it wasn't enough. And even like as a small child, I wasn't fooled. And as an adult rewatching, every time I rewatch it, which is usually once a year at least, it's so obviously not a man. And they could have very easily, with very small adjustments, have actually had her looking more masculine had they bothered to put in the effort into the product that they were giving. So again, I'm not a fan of that. I did like the whole succubus concept with like the gross, disgusting egg sacs, with the, fear of rejection turning you into a literal lust monster. Um, I even liked the psychic connection, had it not meant that the actress had to swim in olive oil the entire time that she was filming. I think it would have been an okay, like I would have liked that concept more. It's just in order to show that Phoebe was running a temperature, they literally made her shiny, and it was weird and gross. So, overall, I wasn't a fan. There are, like I said, the overall concept was strong, but, and I didn't have any problem with like the Alan Prue dating thing, but it wasn't very impactful either. But a lot of it I also did not like. Ooh, I also like the reveal to Daryl. I like that he found out, not necessarily about the sisters yet, but at least that the supernatural exists because Darla ran at him with her tongue out. I also liked that Inspector Smith got his comeuppance for being a disgusting pervert. So, those positives considered, but the overall negatives considered, I would say probably my personal ranking for this episode, I feel like I can't give it higher than a 3. So for me, it will be a 3 out of 10 episode. So as a reminder of our personal ranking list so far, in first place we have Witch Trial, second The Painted World, third She's a Man Baby, a Man, fourth The Devil's Music, and in fifth Morality Bites. And that now brings us to our final segment, which is, of course, our series ranking so far, where we are ranking each of the seasons against each other. As a reminder, on our mostly objective ranking list, season 1 ended with 73.18%, and with the addition of 10 for this episode, we are now at 40 out of 220. And then on our personal side, we ended season 1 at 71.50%. And with the addition of 3 for this episode, we are now at 21 out of 220. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 2, Episode 5, She's a Man Baby, a Man. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.